Before you associate with Marina.
You're on camera. I'm testing my setup with you. What is that? This is your on-camera performance?
Masyado.
Okay. Thanks. Hey friends, welcome to the heyBrownBerry podcast. Welcome in. Thank you for being here. I am sitting in my yard. It is Friday morning. Anyone else having trouble remembering what day it is? Forget about the date. It's March, a Friday. I'm sitting here in an area of my yard that my husband, who has a very green set of thumbs, kind of carved out for us. It's off to the side of our house, and he decided that he really wanted a nice pathway that was kind of intentionally created. And in this pathway, there are a lot of native plants, like the saw palmetto behind me, native to South Florida or Florida. And because they're native plants, they tend to grow really well. We've got a lot of plants that are very tolerant of sandy soils and that are well rooted so that they can withstand things like hurricanes, and they tolerate that so well that they tend to be very prolific. So I have this small little hideaway where those plants provide a kind of a canopy. There are some really tall pine trees above me, which don't give a lot of shade, but there are other ground cover type plants and things like the saw palmetto that kind of create this natural canopy. So that's where I am. I hope that you enjoy having some greenery to look at, and I'm really glad you've come back to join me. As I said in my last podcast, published just before this one, I am going to just chat with you about what I've been making and catch you up on what's going on over here. And then I'm also going to insert some video memories from my trip to Norway, which I took in February. We are still in a state of a global pandemic, and the SARS-CoV-2 virus is just taking more and more effect around the world. Part of my family's plan to shelter in place is that we're just trying to be more appreciative of home. Even to sit out here in the yard, I feel so much more calm. I don't feel the need to go anywhere. Social distancing is a practice we've taken on very willingly, because I do believe that if all of us stay within our little personal circles for right now, we can certainly slow down the spread of this virus. I have to say that because we were previously homeschooling parents and because we live in a rural area, some of this shift has been pretty smooth for us. I won't say easy because that would downplay some of the challenges, but it has been something we've accepted, and it's definitely giving me more gratitude for the things that I do have right here around me. I hope you're feeling that too. As usual, I love hearing back from you in the comments. So if you are having a pretty smooth time or a really rough time and you just would like a place to share, please do that in the comments. Feel free. Because I am not leaving the house very much, my attitude is made better by just deciding that there are really great things here that I can work on, and that's allowing me to just enjoy it. So I am going to share a little bit of what I've been doing this week in particular. I talked about my knitting projects last time, and this time I thought it would be nice to share with you my natural dyeing adventures. I am by no means an expert natural dyer. I come to it by way of just a enthusiastic interest and with the luck of friends who are phenomenal natural dyers and their willingness to share their knowledge with me. I'm not someone who dyes for kind of a production purpose. I have sold some of my naturally dyed yarns, but very sporadically and in small quantities. I really do it for the process. Most of what I've been dyeing over the last couple of years has been done with food waste. From what I've read and learned about natural dyeing, you have many options as to how you can get color onto animal fibers, whether in the raw fiber form or in a format of yarn skeins, fabric, different types of fabrics like cotton and silk, and even paper and thread and other things tend to take color really well and are available as a canvas for natural dyeing. My preference for food waste as a dye material comes from really two things. The first is that it's readily available. Readily available to me means I don't need to buy it from somewhere else or order it in some quantity. So as an example, I love dyeing with avocado skins and avocado pits. My husband loves avocado. I unfortunately can't eat a lot of it due to an intolerance, but he eats a lot. He might go through 2 or 3 in a week easily, and he buys them 5 or 6 at a time. And I've totally got him trained now, so whenever he's eating them, he leaves the skins on the counter for me in the kitchen so that I can clean them up and put them in my pantry to just let them dry. That's where I store them. And when he's finished with one, he leaves the pit, the seed, on the counter for me as well. And then I usually scrub that, cut it in half or into pieces, and same, I put it in the pantry and let it dry. And I do that mainly so that I can accumulate an amount that I know will dye at least a skein or 2 of yarn. So again, not a high production assembly line kind of natural dye effort, but it's so easy because I just wait until I've got enough of that and until I get an itch to dye. Onion skins is another favorite of mine. It's readily available because all of us love onions in our house. So I use yellow onion skins and red onion skins to create some really deep yellow and orange colors. It's one of my favorites. And I find that even with a small amount, say 50 to 100 grams of onion skins, you can get a huge, like a 30-gallon pot of color. And as with most things with natural dyeing, you just have to play. You have to play around with concentration of your dye material. I enjoy playing with different types of fiber or fabric to see how the color takes. And because it's something that I can store up just naturally by the way that we eat in my house, I love that. So that's one factor, the availability, which also gets to cost. It doesn't cost me additional money because those are 2 things that come into my house anyway that we buy as part of our groceries. And then instead of just tossing or composting that material, I can use it for color. And then once I've run it through a dye process, I actually do compost it anyway. So I feel like I'm getting multiple uses out of it. In many cases, when you're dyeing with food or plant materials, those dyes don't require additional mordant or modifiers. So if you're not familiar with natural dyeing, the term mordant refers to all different types of substances that can help a dye affix to a material. So for a dye to be more color fast or light fast, where it may not fade as easily, and for it to have some strength in the color, you can oftentimes use a mordant. There are metal salt mordants, there are natural plants that create a chemical mordant, and with some of the food waste that I use to dye, like onion skins and avocados, I don't need that additional mordant in order to get really good color fast, light fast dyes. And so that's just one less thing to buy, one less thing to play around with, and it feels easy. Now, I do use mordants, I do use other types of dyes. I really enjoy the process all around. So right now, on this particular kind of vein, I'm happy to have that available. I've been doing some dyeing this week, and I will share with you by way of video some of the colors that I've been getting. I've been working with avocados, pits and peels, onion skins, and also some logwood. Now, the logwood is a plant material. Logwood chips come from a tree, and I bought that on a trip last summer to Vancouver at a place called Maywa, and they had just a wealth of extracts and dye materials that you get in a jar, and you follow the instruction for concentration percentage. And logwood is one that I chose because it gives a deep purple color, and I thought that's something I would love on yarn or fabric, so I went for it. And this week I've actually done some combinations of those three types of dye materials. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about how I have been sheltering in place and doing some natural dyeing. Now, I have done natural dyeing inside my house in the kitchen. If I'm using, non-toxic, harmless type substances, I will dye on the kitchen stove sometimes. But I've recently discovered, because I've been sitting outside a lot and doing a small pine wood fire, that's like a free source of heat that doesn't add to my electricity bill, and dyeing in the dye pots over the fire, as you've just seen, has become my new favorite thing. I'm sure many other dyers have long since discovered the joy of dyeing outside, but it's new to me and it's pretty exciting. Probably the only downside right now is that I'm not shopping and I'm not going out much, so I'm not buying yarn or fabric or other things to dye, and I haven't been ordering things from the internet to dye, so my only shortage is dyeable materials. But I've been eyeing some of the older kind of dingy white t-shirts in my closet and I put a couple of those in the dye pot the other day, so just using what I have has given me some special joy. So I thought I'd insert another segment of notes from Norway for you. I have been so relishing the memories from this trip, and so that's why I keep sharing it. Talking of materials, and again, a focus on place and using what you have and bringing things in locally. We saw a great example of that on one of our field trips from the Knitography Retreat while we were in Norway. And I'm going to share with you our visit to Fannrem Garden, which is a home and farm run by Jon Fredrik. He invited all of us on the retreat to see his working farm, to have a beautiful lunch with him, and also to see some of his making. He is a very multi-talented maker, and in these clips you'll see him doing some spinning and some weaving. You'll get to meet some of his sheep and see some of the beautiful, beautiful textile work that Jon Fredrik is known for. We had the pleasure of just listening to his tie back to his own family history, which is something that always appeals to me when I get to hear the story and someone's why. And he showed us his working studio. He let us explore around his home, which is just covered in the most scrumptious colors and textures. And I really felt like the connection between us makers is often seen in the materials that we use and in the things that we produce. It's a really good, warm feeling to see that, even from a country like Norway, which is so far away from me, and still feel very close to what it's like to turn materials into beautiful things. So I hope you'll enjoy this segment on Notes from Norway and Fannrem Garden.
A weaver, everything to do with wool. He hand sews the local bunad.
Oh, wow.
He sews the local bunaddrakt for this region, and he supplies all of the meat and the produce.
I'm running this farm here, mostly in a traditional way, because I'm an historian. So my profession used to be more a lecturer than a farmer. But I inherited this farm 7 years ago, and we have built up a business that contains mostly that we supply restaurants in Trondheim with dairy products. So what we are doing is we have milk cows, and from them we make sour cream and butter, which you are going to taste the butter at least afterwards. And we have more like an open farm.
I'm sorry, I don't listen. You just look like you. Yeah.
Oh, she loves you.
Yeah, you just want to cuddle on her nipple. I've been sitting outside quite a bit working on this project, which is the all-terrain sweater. It's a test knit I'm doing for Jimmy Knits. You can hear a little bit more about it in my previous episode. This is the front portion of the sweater that I'm working on. I'm knitting back and forth on US 6 or 4 millimeter needles. Here's a beautiful little stitch marker, which was made by Patricia, who is P4 Chen. This is actually the Bardshag Herregard logo, and that is the hotel where we stayed when we were in Norway, and she just perfectly created these little souvenir progress keepers for us. So I'm working away on this. I have the shoulder shaping and the second sleeve to go, so making good progress. I've really enjoyed working on it outside. I often get questions from people about the fact that I live in Florida and knit with wool. As you can see, I'm sitting here outside. I don't find it very bothersome to knit with wool. I know for some folks, even to have it in their lap is uncomfortable, but I actually have my project bag just seated underneath me. This was made by my friend Kate, who is Kate of Hawthorne Cottage Craft. Hi, Kate, if you're watching. And this sits in my lap, and then the project kind of sits right on top of it. And I'm able to knit pretty comfortably. It's not touching any of my skin, so that probably keeps me from feeling too hot or overwhelmed by it. And it doesn't tend to bother my hands either, so I'm very grateful for that because it means I can make progress on sweater projects and have them ready for when the weather calls for them. Hope you enjoyed that little visit, that virtual visit. I am planning my next set of making. I'm just going to share a little clip with you of some sewing plans that I have. I have the benefit of a craft room that is kind of bulging with possibilities, and I've got some great fabric to work with. I'm thinking of actually making a project bag. I'd like to make one that has a zipper, and I want it to be quite large. As I've been working with this sweater and the pieces get bigger and I finish additional parts of the sweater, I think about having a bag that just accommodates everything, including my extra skeins of yarn. And right now I am very fortunate to have a lot of project bags, but not a lot of really large ones. So I'm looking for kind of a zippered tote that is big enough for a sweater project. And I found in my little stash of planned projects this gorgeous flowered fabric that I had actually cut out from a sundress that my girls outgrew. Back, I think more than a year ago, I put together a little sewing project box, and the idea was I'd put projects together, or put the materials for projects together, and I would write myself a little note about what I thought those materials could be used for. And in this case, with this bag, I wanted to reuse this beautiful sundress fabric, and I wanted to put together a bag that had a really sturdy bottom. And so I thought pairing it with the lovely tweed that I received, or that I purchased at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival a couple years ago, would be a great way to get a sturdy bag bottom. And then the zipper was from a place that we have called Resource Depot. Resource Depot is this wonderfully full store, and I loosely call it a store. It's a place where people can bring materials that they no longer want, and they're resold at a very inexpensive price. And their focus is, I feel like their focus is makers, because they have all of the materials that you might want, things that would spark project ideas, not just fabric, not just notions, but cardboard and carpet remnants and tin cans and rubber bands and all of these things that people often don't need anymore in quantity, but others can take. One man's trash is another man's treasure kind of thing. And I went there and found a whole bunch of different colored zippers, so I was glad to find one that would go together well in this planned project. If I've gotten my act together and actually finished the bag today, I will insert a video of that finished project. If not, I will be sure and share that with you another time. So I want to keep this fairly short. I think it's been a relief to me to have a way to connect with you all, and I appreciate those of you watching, because it means I am not alone in what I'm doing. I'm feeling still somewhat connected even if we are not physically getting together. I appreciate all of you who come here. I appreciate my subscribers and those of you who comment. It really does make a difference. Thanks so much for spending a little time with me, and I will see you again very soon, friends. Take care. Bye for now. Mwah.